Standard disclaimer, I tend to go off on tangents, so content warning for my entire channel. Also, I am not an expert on anything I talk about. I'm just an internet troll explaining his view of the world. Throwing it back to more recently recorded me for the actual episode. Hello and welcome to a slightly late Christmas edition of Lyrical Poetry with me, the Wombat Kid. Today we're going to be talking about the Christmas truce. A story that's sort of told as a feel-good story about war, even though it's actually sort of messed up if you think about it for even a couple minutes. This week's song recounts the story. Christmas in the Trenches was written by John McDermott as part of an album he recorded for his parents that ended up being commercially released in 1992 under the name Danny Boy. I don't really think I have much more to say as an opening, so let's get into this. Oh, my name is Francis Tulliver. I come from Liverpool. 2 years ago the war was waiting for me after school. From Belgium and to Flanders, Germany to here, I fought for king and country I hold dear. 'Twas Christmas in the trenches, and the frost so bitter hung. The frozen fields of France were still, no Christmas songs were sung. Our families back in England were toasting us that day. They're brave and glorious lads so far away. I was laying with my messmates on the cold and rocky ground, when across the line of battle came a most peculiar sound. Says I now, listen up, me boys, each soldier strained to hear, as one young German voice sang out so clear. He's singing bloody well, you know, my partner says to me. Soon one by one each German voice joined in harmony. The cannons rested silent and the gas clouds rolled no more, as Christmas brought us respite from the war. As soon as they were finished, and a reverent pause was spent, God rest ye merry gentlemen, struck up some lads from Kent. The next thing sang was Stille Nacht, it's silent night, says I, and in two tongues one song filled up that sky. There's someone coming towards us now, the front-line sentry said. All sights were fixed on one lone figure trudging from their side. His truce flag like a Christmas star shone on the plain so bright, as he bravely trudged unarmed into the night. Then one by one on either side walked into no man's land. With neither gun nor bayonet we met there hand to hand. We shared some secret brandy, and we wished each other well, and in a flare-lit football game we gave them hell. We traded chocolates, cigarettes, and photographs from home, these sons and fathers far away from families of their own. Tom Sanders played the squeeze box, and they had a violin, this curious and unlikely band of men. Soon daylight stole upon us, and France was France once more. With sad farewells we each began to settle back to war. But the question haunted every heart that lived that wondrous night. Whose family have I fixed within my sights? 'Twas Christmas in the trenches, and the frost so bitter hung. The frozen fields of France were warmed, the songs of peace were sung. For the walls they'd kept between us, to exact the work of war, had crumbled and were gone forevermore. Oh, my name is Francis Tulliver, from Liverpool I dwell. Each Christmas come since World War I, I've learned its lesson well. For the ones who call the shots won't be among the dead and lame, and on each end of the rifle we're the same. So first thing to say is that this is a narrative rather than being lyrical, so there's less room for interpretation and stuff, but we can still hit the relevant passages and talk about stuff, so let's get to work. I think a lot of this song really speaks for itself, but as per usual, I'm going to start from the top, and we're going to check out the lines that I think are important to talk about separately. So first line from the top that I feel is worth picking out is, the cannons rested silent, and the gas clouds rolled no more, as Christmas brought us respite from the war. This is actually the uncritical, messed up framing that we're sort of taught about this story, that Christmas brought them respite from the war. When really, they just had enough of the bullshit for a night and decided to stop it. Christmas isn't really the reason for it, they are. So, spoilers, one of the things the song is about is how both sides were actually the same and had a lot more in common, and the next line that starts pointing that out is, the next thing sang was Stille Nacht, it's silent night, says I, in two tongues one song filled up the sky. Even though they don't speak the same language, they're culturally very the same. Like, they worship the same gods, they celebrate the same holidays, they even sing the same songs, they just do it in a different language. There's a lot more in common between them than there is different, but they're being forced to fight anyway. You can see it in the next bit. Then one by one on either side walked into no man's land. With neither gun nor bayonet, they met there hand in hand. They shared some secret brandy and wished each other well. And in a flare-lit football game, we gave them hell. These people have so little to actually fight about that they're able to just play football, or soccer as we would call it, and just have fun with each other. Like, in my opinion, any two groups that can sit down and just have a friendly football game like that don't have any reason to be fighting each other, and they're just doing it because the rich assholes at home are making them. And the next bit I want to talk about reinforces this too. The question haunted every heart that lived that wondrous night. Whose family have I fixed within my sights? When you're at war, the rich people at home don't want you to think about the other side as being people with families. They want you to dehumanize them as much as possible. That way you can kill them without having to think about it. It's actually part of the way the military operates. The more you can dehumanize someone else, the easier it is for you to just kill them. That's sort of what they want. I'm just going to finish off the next line, and then we're going to talk about why I think the Christmas truce is actually a bullshit story if you haven't gotten there yet. For the walls they'd kept between us to exact the work of war had crumbled and were gone forevermore. Each Christmas come since World War I, I've learned its lesson well. For the ones who call the shots won't be among the dead and lame, and on each end of the rifle we're the same. This song's actually stating what we're pretty much taught about World War I here in Canada. John McDermott is a Canadian, if you didn't know. We're sort of taught that the whole conflict was completely fucking pointless and that a whole bunch of people like me or you got dragged into a bullshit war they were conscripted in that had nothing to do with any of them. World War I was fought entirely because of treaties made by rich people with other rich people. It had nothing to do with the poor people fighting in the front lines. But they were the ones expected to go and die, and they did. It was actually fucking horrible and completely senseless. I forget which YouTuber I watched said this, but somebody I watched pointed out pretty recently that the world being at war is actually a fucking doomsday scenario, and the way our society seems to have moved past it is actually pretty weird, especially since we're still dealing with some of the fallout from World War I today. World War II and the Cold War were both directly the results of World War I, and we're still dealing with that horse shit. But yeah, if I haven't made it really clear, the reason this story is actually complete horseshit is because it's used as a feel-good story about how Europeans are so civilized at war that we can take breaks from it and have coffee with each other and shit. That shit is actually way more brutal than just leaving these walls up all the time. You're letting people know that there's absolutely no reason to fight with their enemies and then making them go do it anyway. It is fucking horseshit. I've seen veterans in Canada try to paint this as a feel-good story, even though Canada didn't even participate in the Christmas truce. The Christmas truce only happened in certain spots along the front. It didn't happen everywhere, and as far as anyone can tell, nobody from Canada participated in it. But it's still a story told here, because why the fuck not? Anyway, I hope I got my point across as to why this story is complete horseshit to me. Moral of the story is, don't go to war if you don't have to. Or as System of a Down once put it, why don't presidents fight the war? Why do they always send the poor? Merry Christmas, everybody. Have a happy New Year, too. I think I might be back before the New Year. No, I will actually not be making my next episode until the 1st, so I'll see you next year. That's the show. If you like what I do, why? Also, share, like, and subscribe. If you really like what I do, I'm still not understanding why, but you can leave me money at my Patreon, which will be linked in my description box. Remember those? That's what those are for. If you don't like what I do, make sure to down thumb this video, because it drives engagement. See you next time.